Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Senator Summers, for your very important questions and points made about this budget. For those of you at home, if you want to know how your state government works, we received a 717-page budget adjustment bill at roughly 6 a.m. this morning that includes tens of billions of dollars of spending of your taxpayer dollars that nobody had a chance to read who's going to vote on it here today, that the public didn't have a chance to read who is going to see it voted upon today in a state with the third highest taxes, some of the lowest economic growth and job creation in the entire country, and it is considered acceptable to vote upon a 717-page budget, $28 billion of taxes and spending just a few hours after it is released to the public and to legislators who are voting on it. This is not how democracy is supposed to work. This is not how Connecticut state government should work. This is not why and how voters expected us to act when they voted us to come to our state government. And the proof is in the pudding. It was written wisely that by their fruits you shall know them. Well, this is the fruits that we have to show for our tax and spending policy in the state of Connecticut. We have the third highest tax burden in the entire country of any state, according to the Tax Foundation. Over the last 8 years, from 2018 to 2025, according to the Bureau of Economic Analysis, Connecticut has the fourth lowest rate of economic growth of any state in the country. This budget today is the perfect bookend to 8 years of economic failure under the Lamont administration and large Democratic majorities in the state legislature. This administration and these majorities in the state legislature inherited one of the best bipartisan policy innovations in the state of Connecticut in many decades, the fiscal budgetary guardrails. Those guardrails recognized the failures of the past in Connecticut, the borrow and spend and tax policies of the past that kicked the can down the road to the next generation, expecting them to pay, raising taxes year after year in order to meet those promises, and strangling economic growth and making the state so unaffordable. Well, in 2017, when this Senate was tied 18-18 between Democrats and Republicans, there was a bipartisan agreement, even without the original assent of the Democratic governor, to pass budget guardrails that limited how much we can spend as a state government, that limited how much we could borrow as a state government, and hopefully would result in paying down billions of dollars of unfunded liability and debt. Well, at the end of 8 years of those policies that paid dividends to the state of Connecticut, we are being left with a budget that essentially shreds them. The perfect bookend of 8 years of this administration and the majorities in this state government is ending the one good economic and budgetary policy that we have seen passed in the last generation in Connecticut. And even amidst all that, even after those 8 years, we've still seen our taxes increase by hundreds of millions of dollars. We saw taxes increase by about $800 million in the 2019 budget. We saw taxes increase on Connecticut residents by $500 million in the 2019 Senate Bill 1. We saw tax increases like the highway use tax. In that subsequent time, we saw tax increases on small businesses in the form of the business tax surcharge. In that time, all of which have added up to hundreds of millions of dollars of tax increases in those last 8 years, on top of the gradual erosion and elimination of those budget guardrails. So, let's just take perspective. Once this budget adjustment document is passed that maybe a couple people can actually understand what's in it, and certainly the public had no opportunity to know what's in it. We are going to eviscerate the budget guardrails to the point that billions of dollars of debt will now be incurred on the backs of Connecticut taxpayers that wouldn't have otherwise, in addition to taxes being locked in at such a sky-high level in Connecticut. So $300 million endowment fund, an off-budget fund that the state government can spend above the spending cap. A $500 million emergency federal response fund that could be spent not only above the spending cap in the state government, but without even the active approval and involvement of the state legislature, giving one man, the governor, the power to spend hundreds of millions of dollars without any checks or balances. I thought it was no kings. But I guess I might have read it wrong. Those are the violations of the budget guardrails we already have passed. That's $800 million in new debt and higher taxes in the future that you who are listening, who pay your taxes on time and honestly, are going to have to incur. There is, in this budget document, another $400 million increase in the spending cap above the current levels, which already allow this state government to increase spending by like 4 or 5% year over year. So that's not enough to this state government. They say that we have to spend an extra $400 million above the 4 or 5% increase that we're already allowed under the existing budget guardrail protections. Not enough. Not enough for the state government. It's never enough. $28 billion, never enough. Third highest taxes in the country, never enough. On top of that, in this budget, we're raising the volatility cap by $800 million. So that means $800 million of less debt paid down, of less liability paid down. And that liability that you owe as a taxpayer, think about it this way, you're a taxpayer in this state. There's about $90 billion of bonded debt and unfunded pension and other state employee liabilities. And there are, I think, 1.6 million workers in the state. So that means that you have a debt burden personally, your household has a debt burden personally of over $50,000 because of this state government. And according to the supporters of this legislation here today, they think that's not enough. They actually think it should be higher. So they're going to increase the volatility cap and other borrowing by hundreds of millions of dollars more. Not to give you a tax cut, by the way, but to spend more money. Because you owing $50,000 to this state government, meaning your taxes are going to go up more in the future, that's not enough, according to the leaders of the state government. On top of that, I'm already past $1 billion of more debt and more spending above the spending cap and those budget guardrails, and I haven't even got to everything that's in this document. So now there's going to be $300 million of more endowment funds, and then there's going to be $900 million of hospital reimbursements and spending off the budget. So if you add that up, it's about $3 billion of more spending, and in the long run, more debt and taxes that you're going to have to pay sooner or later, in addition to the fact that you have to pay the third highest taxes in the country currently. It's just the facts. It's just the facts. Every single day, taxpayers, families, residents, all across this state have to tighten their belts because of the policies of this state government that have imposed upon them the third highest taxes in the country, the second highest electric bills in the country, healthcare costs going up 10% year over year, third highest property tax burden, the list goes on. And the state government, while they're forcing you to tighten your belt at home, refuses to do so here. It's never enough for this state government. In the good times, they spend and borrow more. In the bad times, they raise taxes. But they never have a strategy to cut your taxes and to reduce the long-term debt burden. Even in the years where we had the fiscal guardrails in place, the unfunded liabilities of the pension promises went up more than any of the pay down. So we still had an increase in our overall unfunded liability, and we still had an increase, I think, in our overall debt burden too. So even when we acted in a bipartisan way in this state to try to pay down some of our debt, it still wasn't enough to reduce the aggregate unfunded liability and debt burden. So even when we were doing okay, we were just doing okay. This budget document leaves us with no long-term strategy to grow our economy and to reduce taxes on middle class and working class families. There's no off-ramp here. It's actually going to get worse. This will not only lock in the current high tax regime in Connecticut, it will guarantee that if the policies written into this document continue, that the tax burden will only go up in the future. This guarantees more future tax increases. When you're increasing the debt and the spending by billions above where they are now, you are guaranteeing future tax increases. It's going to take one blip for another billion-dollar middle-class and working-class tax increase. There's no two ways about it. Altogether, this budget increases total spending on budget and off budget in fiscal year 2027 by 8.1% over fiscal year 26. How many of our constituents out there are able to increase their family budget by 8% year over year? I don't think any, virtually none. But this state government thinks it's fiscally responsible to increase their spending at 8% year over year. You can repeal and pass all the laws you want. You can't repeal the laws of economics or physics. Eventually, someone's going to have to pay for the spending and the promises. We're just a week after the fact that we raised the state employee pay by 4.5% year over year too, incurring billions of dollars in new liability and obligations. This state does not have a revenue problem, it has a spending problem. It has a spending problem, that's why it has high taxes. Everybody knows it, everybody acknowledges it, everybody goes out on the campaign trail and says they're for affordability and tax cuts, but then they pass an 8% spending increase. There is no possibility of us reducing the long-term tax burden in this state when we're increasing spending by 8% year over year. And that 8% year over year is an increase from what the enacted budget was. So this document today is increasing the 2027 fiscal year spending by 2.6% over what was enacted last year. Again, on a party line vote. It was a very bad budget last year that was passed. It was really bad. I mean, I was surprised because there is flexibility to find savings or moderate the growth of government in order to cut taxes. And that was bad, but it was not even bad enough. They had to increase spending by another 2.6%, so hundreds of millions of more over what was passed last year. And I mean, 8% spending increase is obscene. It takes very little time past that, I don't know my exponential growth off the top of my head, to double the aggregate size of government and significantly increase taxes going forward. Should be no surprise that we've seen job losses while most of the country experiences job increases. Just last year, we as a state lost 2,200 jobs while the country as a whole gained over 500,000 jobs. Over the last 8 years, Connecticut has experienced the fourth lowest rate of economic growth in the country, while it had the third highest taxes, and while this governor and state legislature were increasing taxes by hundreds of millions of dollars more? What's the definition of doing something over and over again and expecting different results? I mean, no one goes around this state and talks to their constituents and people say, no, my taxes aren't high enough, this state is affordable, it's too affordable, it's easy to create jobs, it's easy to get ahead. If I just graduated college or high school and I'm looking for a job, it's easy to find it, it's easy to pay my electric bills, it's easy to get health care and afford health care, and if I'm a small business, it's easy to get health care for my employees. Nobody is saying those things. And yet we're doing the same exact things we've been doing for the last several decades, my entire lifetime, of promising more, spending more, kicking the can down the road, and increasing taxes time and time again. What are we doing? What are we doing? No one can afford this. No one can afford 8% spending increases that will have to be paid by taxpayers. The next generation cannot afford $90 billion of unfunded liabilities and debt. It's a generational theft. It's not just bad economic policy, it's wrong. And when you obliterate the volatility cap to raise spending, not to cut taxes, when you create all these off-budget accounts so you can raise spending by more than 5%, more than 4% year over year, which should be more than enough, you're just guaranteeing that this system, which is already bad and already too costly, is going to get worse. There are good and important parts of this budget that there would be bipartisan agreement on. We need to invest in education. This provides more funding for our public schools and for our towns and cities to invest in that, and that's something that Republicans across the board support. There are 717 pages and billions of dollars of spending in here, and I guarantee you that everybody agrees with some of it, and nobody could agree with all of it. And it would be to the benefit of the entire state if we had passed this in parts, where we had bipartisan agreement, where the return on the spending would be to the benefit of the public interest. It would meet the needs of our social services and public education and so on. But at a certain point, enough is enough. The spending cap is generous enough. It says that you can grow the size of government and spending in the state of Connecticut by household income growth plus inflation, which makes sense because ultimately our families and our workers are paying for this in their taxes. And the state government, in its spending and promises, shouldn't increase in size by more than the people who ultimately have to pay for it are seeing their paychecks grow by. If anything, the spending cap is too high at household income growth plus the rate of inflation. If anything, it's too high because we should expect better of our state government, and it's already too big when you're paying the third highest taxes in the country. But the supporters of this legislation, the supporters of this budget, the administration think that that is enough, that you, the taxpayer, are being too greedy, and that the state government and the state leadership spending your money need more. It's wrong, it's bad economic policy, and it's ensuring decades to come of economic stagnation and an exodus of more families, more jobs, and more opportunity from this state. We can do better. We as a Republican caucus are not here to cast stones. We are here to offer an alternative. And so for that reason, Madam President, the clerk is in possession of LCO number 5764, and I would ask the clerk to please call that amendment. Thank you, Madam President. This is the Republican Senate caucus's budget alternative. We start from the original point of this state budget and the proposals made by our Democratic colleagues. We strengthen the budget guardrails, we invest in education, and we provide hundreds of millions of dollars of middle-class tax relief. This is a budget that is responsible, that provides needed tax relief, and invests in vital services that our state needs. First, it finds several $100 million of spending reductions. It acknowledges that we can find savings in various departments where there isn't needs to continue to hire more and more members of state government. It cuts politically oriented earmarks out of our state budget. It cuts taxpayer funding for people in the country illegally out of our state budget, and in doing so, finds several $100 million of savings in our state budget for taxpayers. It moves more of that off-budget spending back into the budget so that this state government and its policymakers are forced to make tough decisions, just like your family has to. This state government needs to do the equivalent of cutting out the third vacation they're taking every year. And that's what we're saying, that when you spend and tax, it should all be in one place on the budget underneath the spending cap. So we're taking some of the off-budget items and putting it within the general fund under the spending cap. We invest in education at similar or higher levels as this existing budget, including the ECS investments that we do think are necessary. And in the process of all of that, finding spending reductions, prioritizing the most important investments in the state, strengthening the fiscal guardrails compared to where this proposal is from the majority, we are then able to provide over $700 million of middle-class tax relief and a little tax relief for farmers and other businesses in need. $750 million is what we're proposing in middle-class and working-class tax relief, to the tune of over $1,000 for the average family making a middle income in calendar year 2027, while strengthening the budget guardrails, while limiting wasteful government spending. This is a better alternative. And this is a compromise. This doesn't start from the ground up. This doesn't eliminate that much of what is originally being proposed by our Democratic colleagues, but this finds a way to strengthen the guardrails, to protect taxpayers in the long term, limiting wasteful spending, and delivering middle-class tax relief to the tune of over $1,000 per family starting in calendar year 2027. Madam President, I would ask for a roll call vote when it is taken, but there needs to be a better alternative. There needs to be leadership in defense of taxpayers in this state. It's long overdue we deliver lasting, significant middle-class tax relief in Connecticut, and this proposal does it. Thank you.